Thank you for joining us in our season 2. My first guest for season 2 is Benita Shetty. You might know her as we both collaborated from Cross Borders for Urban Jam. Benita is the Barcelona based founder and executive editor of The Smart Citizen, a cross national platform for sharing experience and collaboration on smart nations, cities, regions, and communities. She promotes and advocates smart city strategies through context rich case studies with a geographic focus on Europe and India. In her current capacity, she is the regional leader of Placemaking India, a self organized network of placemakers and convenor of Placemaking Week India. In this episode, she reflects back on her journey of journalism, IT, and placemaking movement in India and how different life experiences impacted the way she works now. Assalamu alaikum and hello everyone. I am Asban Sari, the founder of the organization Peacemakers Pakistani, and I'm bringing you the stories of placemakers, artists, and professionals from around the globe about how they created an impact and made change happen. You are listening to the Making It Happen show. Thank you for joining in. Enjoy the episode. Hello, Vineeta.
Hi, Asba. So great to see you. Hope you're doing well this Sunday morning.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much for joining me. How are you and how is it going? How is it in Pune?
Yes, Pune is a bit chilly today. It's winter here, and we have a lovely winter actually. So it's not as hot as it is in the south. So just come back from Udupi, where we are going to be organizing our Placemaking India annual event. It's much warmer there. So yeah, so this is my hometown and grown up here.
Awesome. Okay, so let's start with the questions, and I have so much to hear from you today. Okay, so tell me about your how did you find your passion for public spaces and the placemaking movement, and tell me about Placemaking India and your journey so far.
Sure. I was in Valencia in 2019 summer for Placemaking Week Europe. Of course, it's a long journey about how I got there, but I can sort of weave back and forth. And I was just there out of curiosity. I actually had a blog those days called The Smart Citizen, which I still write sometimes. But this community startup, Placemaking India, has really consumed much of my energy now. And so I was taking notes, and Ethan Kent, the executive director of Placemaking X, called me. I'd met him on previous occasions in Amsterdam and New York, and he asked me, "Can you start an affiliate in India? Because we're missing an affiliate. That's a big hole for us in India." And so it was a year when Asia was just opening up in terms of placemaking, especially Malaysia, and I took it up as a challenge. I just had 5 months to organize the inaugural meeting of Placemaking India. And amazingly, we had just the number of people that could fit in the space that we could get for free, which was about 40 people. It was in a kind of an ancient vada, which is a structure where there's an atrium in between, and rooms on either side. So it's an open air, sort of the center of the house. The central courtyard is open to the elements. And it turned out to be such a wonderful event. And we just had, a perfect number of people and mix of various disciplines. And so since then, it's just taken off, and did not take long to ignite this movement because there was such a pent up demand. Almost everybody wants to do something for public spaces. I mean, there's a strong sentiment and the strong sort of feeling to, uplift the life, especially of communities, which are marginalized because they don't have access to public spaces. In fact, what ignited my interest in governance and cities was really in 2008. It dates back to 2008. I was a tech journalist for the bulk of my career, for almost a quarter of a century, and I was in Bombay, which I was actually living in Bombay at the time because um, I was trying my hand at trying to get out of telecoms, which had started to bore me a little bit. So I was a telecommunications specialist. And I wandered into a conference called Municipalika in Mumbai. That was in 2008. And I walked into a speech by the municipal commissioner who was talking about um, the need for equipping roads for vehicular traffic and building an underground road. So the conversation at that time was still about, how to accommodate vehicular traffic, four wheelers. And he made a comment along the way which really startled me because he said, the demand for green spaces comes from the elite. And I was really surprised at the remark because I felt the elite can go to Switzerland, they can go to, of the South Bombay, they can travel, they have access to hill stations, and they can get their dose of oxygen anytime. But it's actually the poor people who spend more time on the streets. The workers, the people who are delivery boys, the working class, really, and they are the ones who really need green spaces. So it's not a demand from the elite. It's actually a requirement for for the bulk of people. And so I think 10 years on, we really changed the conversation in India because you'll find very few mayors, commissioners saying, make room for roads, make room for four wheelers. Because now the talk is, yes, there are a lot of projects for multi-level car parking, but that's with the intention of freeing up roads for pedestrians and for cyclists and for the bulk of the people who are using the road, not the 5% to 8% who use cars. So I'm really gratified how the conversation has changed, Ron, as people get exposed to ideas from Europe and elsewhere in India. The conversation has absolutely changed. And Smart Cities mission now is more about livable cities and sustainable cities. So I'm really gratified to see that. So there was already this sentiment, and it did not take long for people to sort of rally around the cause of public spaces and communal spaces and improving our public spaces, making them more, making them more easy to manage, and so it's been very gratifying, been a very gratifying experience, and there's been no shortage of people. If we take as an indicator the number of followers we have on our LinkedIn page, it just over the course of years, it's exceeded 1,000 followers. So you've got 1,200 or more followers on our LinkedIn page, and then a lot of people following us on Instagram and elsewhere. And so that's been really gratifying. And I must say that I don't consider myself a practitioner as a placemaker because my job is a convener. So I convene people, convene the community. So I consider myself a leader of a community startup. But I did have my experience as working in, for a short while, I was working as an intergovernmental civil servant. So my background is in journalism and intergovernmental civil service. And I had to organize a meeting for various African visitors for a conference in Jaipur. So the last day was a free day, and so I went to a town called Samod outside Jaipur, and I sort of gave them a piece of my mind because I said, I'd like to bring people here, but this is, we need to see some changes here. Like, you have to clean up this place. There's too much, there's a lot of junk around, a lot of garbage around. And, I can't bring people here from Africa, many of them are from ministries of telecom and IT. I was so amazed at how they sprung into action, the local government, the people, and they just cleaned up the place. And it was a really successful visit because it was the end of a conference. And it was simply, my, urging them and my vision of what it should look like, which really mobilized them into really what was my earliest experience of a placemaking exercise where all the community came and pitched in to demonstrate you know what was great about that village. And it was, yeah, really a small town outside Jaipur. So that was really, I would say, my first encounter with placemaking, and that was before I knew what placemaking was. And it's been really gratifying, and that's what I would, that's how I would summarize my experience.
Yeah, and we are born with these abilities to make a place, to create some environment, everything like that. So we can call ourselves tastemakers if we are making an effort to make changes around us. Okay, so your passion for making places better for people took you to places like events where you met Ethan Kent and other placemakers, right?
Yes, in a way, what I'm doing is really making a place for placemakers. So I'm a placemaker to placemakers. A big part of my role is organizing the annual event, which is a live event. Of course, we had to postpone it because of COVID a few times, but I'm sure it'll happen. So, Zoom is a great way to. It's one of the blessings of the COVID pandemic, because we've been able to rally people around different issues. And of course, our urban jam was one of them that we did together. And so it is really about placemaking. And when we get together, it's not just conference, because it's a lot of it is boots on the ground action. We walk around, we do sort of multi-sensing journeys, and hackathons and huddles. And this is the format for our events, our annual events. So
Right. Okay, so tell me about, share your experience of launching the Placemaking India event. You launched it in 2019, right?
yes, that's right. We were so gratified to find. Of course, my first thing was to look for local placemakers, because we wanted to start. Yeah, we did have connections with the municipal corporation, which was helpful, but it was also important to have people with love of place. And each place has, the metropolises are teeming with people, with placemakers, and a lot of people who are doing things, very good things. But it's much harder to find it in smaller places. And so we had a ready-made, uh, you know, sort of local placemaking initiative in Chinchwad, in the urban village of Chinchwad, because Chinchwad is a highly industrialized. I mean, it's also the automotive hub. It's an industrial hub, and all the majors, some of the major names in the industrial world actually located there. But in the midst of that is Chinchwad Gaon, which is still like an urban village. It still retains its dignity and its grace. And so our focus was really, so our activities are centered on that little village. And it's amazing how um, people actually loved being there because um, it was a place which people would normally go to. Like maybe a lot of people go to Pune or Bombay. Not many people come to Chinchwad, which is one of the most, which is one of the biggest and the fastest growing municipalities actually in India. And so the location, and it just all came about through love of place, really, like identifying a location for the meeting, and a path that people could take, playing the place game. So identifying places where we could take people for the play, on the place game. And so that was a tool we adapted from Project for Public Spaces, and adapted it to our own context. And as I said, 40 people showed up, and those people ended up being the founding members. And we got a lot of support from the local municipal corporation who, after we'd left, so that's an indication of some of the impact we had, where we've been. They really woke up some of the issues of, say, creating sort of a road, a pedestrian connection to all the various sites. So there was there was an orphanage. There's a public like museum. There's a potential for a temple. Which is often a place where people congregate, and various structures which are still existing, some riverside structures. So creating a path and a budget to restore those heritage structures. So this was one of the impacts of our coming together. And so we like to leave. It's not just an opportunity to have fun and meet and network, but we want to leave an impact where we go. And we also donated 15% of the net income to a tribal children's charity in the Chinchwad village. So
Great.
that
Yeah,
was the
I just felt like I was the part of it. Really good. You remember everything. Great. Okay, so it was
yeah,
impressive that you just put forward an idea and people joined in. We find the tribe
yeah.
along the way, definitely. Okay, so tell me, how did you find me and the idea of Urban Jam across the border? I hope many people will be interested in it.
Yes, thanks to Placemaking X, we've been able to, identify people in South Asia. So, it wasn't very long before we, thanks to Placemaking X's networking and linking people up, that we discovered, we ran into you and your lovely posts on LinkedIn. That was really how it all got started. There's always been this, of course, the India and Pakistan. I mean, despite the borders, for me at least, the Indus River, the Sindhu River, alongside, especially alongside Punjab, was where India's like received knowledge, because we have two kinds of knowledge. One is received knowledge and one is remembered knowledge. And our received knowledge actually comes from the banks of the Indus. So we have a strong emotional connection to the Indus River, particularly on the forested banks of the Sindhu, as we call it. And that's where the Vedas, the four Vedas, were received. So I think there's a strong interest that the Indian government should recognize. Long before we revered the Ganges. We actually, the Indus River was more important to us, and I hope the Indian government recognizes that and takes a hand in more collaboration and restores some of the, at least the cultural collaboration between India and Pakistan. So obviously, you were curious about Delhi. We were curious about Lahore. And that's how it all came about, because we said, why not put the two together. And and this was also an intergenerational linking up, because you were a young urban artist from Lahore, and Ashok Lal was a seasoned architect from Delhi. And that was such a great conversation. I think we were oversubscribed. We had to actually turn people away, on Zoom, because we just weren't equipped to deal with more than 100 people on Zoom, the Zoom call. And that was the start of a wonderful series, which I'm so gratified you took an interest in, because you did a lot of research on, it was like our unofficial twinning of the cities between India and Pakistan, sort of exploring all the placemaking opportunities. So, um, you know, I think we came close to kind of maybe a South Asian, um, cataloging of issues, and what's important to us. And uh, I think it was one of the most fun and creative exercises I've actually done in the last year. And it was thanks to you and your enthusiasm to dig up the right people, and I did it on this side as well, that we made this happen. Yeah, we made this happen. Urban Jam, Indo-Pak Conversations. And the fact that extended from one Independence Day to the next one was really, resonant, because we're only a day apart in terms of our Independence Days. So it was a lot of fun, because the heart was in it. I mean, sometimes you can do things in a very cerebral way, but I think this was where I think our hearts were in it, and that's why it worked. And,
Yes.
it was very well received. Very well received.
Yeah, I remember when you connected, and I didn't find any problem in that, but I was very excited to do it. I was excited to learn. I wanted to see how this collaboration would go in the twinning of cities. Definitely, it was very interesting to me. That's why I was just very enthusiastic about research that which cities resemble which ones, which we have common things in it. Yeah, it was amazing. I remember the experience as well. It was a joyful collaboration experience, everything. So I just remember that we were so overwhelmed with joy after the success of the series. It lasted 1 year. The collaboration, the
Yes.
talk, and everything, and experience was. I just I didn't have words to put it. I was like, "Wow, we did it! Did it for a year." And likewise, it was
Yes.
your experience as well. So just express
Yeah,
that.
and exactly. And the amazing thing was that the speakers also, for them, it was a revelation. So, and the moderators as well. So, even the moderators like Vikas Chandra from the ministry, and from, Olga Chapliansky, and they were also very enthused by it, because it is something that really touched the heart, because
Mm,
uh, it was a revelation for them to discover some of the similarities, some of the differences, and common issues that we have. And I especially remember the extremely informative one between Sunila Ahmed and PK Das, Mumbai and Karachi. That was such a wonderful pairing, and I thought it was going to end there, but no, thanks to your enthusiasm, we kept going, and kept pairing cities. So, the US often likes to twin cities all around the world. So, Indian cities are twinned with US cities, but sometimes there's no sort of parity, like, why this city and that city, somewhere in Kansas City, somewhere in Kansas in the Midwest. But I think there's more of we've already done the job for the government of twinning our cities. If we had to twin cities, we have very strong basis for, you know. So the samvad, the dialogue, made us understand some of the similarities and some of the possibilities. And I hope it goes on to lead to some study tours and some exchanges across the border.
yeah,
That's my
because
hope.
We share the same climate issues and the climatic issues and cultural issues somehow as well. So there's so much to learn, and we should be open to that. I hope so that we are open to them. Okay, so tell me about your ongoing projects in Placemaking India. What are you guys up to now? Because I see your network is vast and you're doing a lot of things. I really appreciate them. Would you like to?
Sure. Yeah, we sort of waiting now for Omicron cases to taper off and for interstate travel restrictions because there's a real, you know, sort of feeling to meet in the flesh. We've done a lot of online work, but people want to, they're really excited to meet up. And so, when things are clearer, I'll be able to schedule it again during the course of this year. But I'll sort of give you an insight into some of the things that, I mean, the conferences themselves are important. In the preparation of the conferences, a lot of things get spun off. So our theme next year or this year is water side. So in the course of that, we get a lot of conversations going on waterside placemaking, about creating public destinations on the waterfront and how that can actually, create the political will for cleanup of the waters. So we're not sort of waiting for the waters to be clean before we decide what to do with it, like from STPs, sewage treatment plants, to be put up on the, on the rivers, because we feel that okay, if you identify a place for as a public destination, either like as Mangalore has done, the host city for where we're going to be in this event, creating a nature zone, a culture zone, a zone for activities, for sports activities. So that is something we can really, we're really excited to actually go there and give some feedback to the administrations. Put in a place-making element into it, and some of the principles that, the principles of waterside making. In addition to that, education pathways are important for us. So, and that's something that maybe even Pakistan could consider, which is Peacemakers Pakistani, because there's a need to build capacity. Not only, I mean, we've got like 36,000 graduates in architecture and urban design coming out each year, but maybe there's a scope for absorbing some of them into, city level studios, or cities should be creating studios where they hire architects and urban designers. There's a lot of civil engineers, but there's a missing component in terms of urban design, and that creates some of the problems which we find in South Asian cities. So the lack of architecture and public architecture even, and public space design, those are skills that need to be integrated into cities. And so we continue our, there are other bodies which are also campaigning for that. So that's one of our priorities, but also creating perhaps educational modules in placemaking within existing universities of architecture and urban design. There are several of them in India, possibly one in each corner of India. So that's going to be one of the task forces, we're going to initiate. And, seeking a more expansive view of placemaking, because often, for example, the Ministry of of Housing and Urban Affairs has been working in something called the Placemaking Marathon, where over a period of 75 hours, the city, changes a public space, changes a space into a place. And what we're hoping is that people start thinking more than about paint on asphalt. Putting paint on roads. That is a form of tactical urbanism that we've sort of inherited. But when you actually go to some of the cities which have done this, you could easily pass by those places because the dust has taken over those spaces. They're no longer visible. The paint is no longer visible. So it's the material palette that's being used, and some of our members have been active in pointing this out, that we need to develop our own material palette, rather than putting using paints on asphalt. Maybe there could be paints which become brighter with the sun, or survive the dust, and then cycle tracks which are isolated roads, like showcase streets, but there's no cyclists on those roads. There's no cycling community. So there are a lot of issues which, when you actually go on the ground, you find that although there's a lot of enthusiasm for placemaking, it's very often it's limited to say painting murals, or putting a few benches out, which is fine, but it needs to be done with more public participation and with foresight as to stewardship and maintenance of those public spaces. Uh, so this is also part of our agenda, and uh, we we like to do this through various partnerships, uh, and we have other things lined up, and which we'll be able to announce after our event.
All right, thank you so much for sharing those ideas. And yes, I agree that we need sustainable solutions and sustainable creative ideas for the local environment, the local community, because we people are different from the Western
Yeah.
communities and we need resources to deal with them, the tools to deal with them. And yes, the paint idea, it didn't work in our university even. So I don't think that it will work in the major in the mega city, in the community as well, outside of an institution definitely.
Yeah. Our festivals are already so colorful, and
Yeah.
we're not strangers to color. But if it's just tactical for a day or so, that's another matter. But I think we need to sort of make sure that and there's a whole host of issues. I want to make sure that this recognition of pedestrian rights and cyclist rights are integrated in a very firm way, and that involves enforcement. So it's not only just policy, but enforce things on the ground. And there are a few states, like Karnataka state, which has now come up with a bill which would actually dole out penalties for people who violate the rights of pedestrians and cyclists. So that's very encouraging. We support that. So but yeah, we do need to have more. I think that's where placemaking, um, priorities would sort of differ in South Asia, because really it's not about creating color and bringing the hordes out, but a lot of it is about inclusion and doing so in a healthy way, and really creating barrier free spaces for because there's a even when the West is turning away from catering for the four-wheeler, those are the things we should be looking at. How do we create safer and more healthy spaces for the functionally diverse, the for for the rest of for people who are really the majority of people who use the streets, because streets are 80% of our public spaces. So.
Definitely. Also, okay. So I also want to learn from you that how did you bring people from different fields to this idea of placemaking in the public spaces and one format, one platform of Placemaking India.
Sure. Actually, there was a lot of support from. I can tell you that actually, Placemaking X itself has a lot of inquiries, and so it wasn't difficult once we'd established a platform to magnetize people towards it, because there were already people who had studied abroad, and they learned the value of placemaking. Some of them actually did master's degrees in placemaking, and so those are some of the most active members we have, who've had exposure abroad, really keen to do things in India. I would say though that we still have a bulk of people are architects, urban planners, urban designers, and I would like to have more people from other professions, whether they are geologists, historians, geographers, and we do have a lot of social workers as well, which is very nice. So part of this transdisciplinary mix is people actually engage with the community. So architects are not often qualified to say probe community and say what are their needs, because placemaking essentially it starts with a community need. So it starts with a community need, not with design. And so we're very lucky to have a whole host of people who, would uh, especially equipped for community engagement. So very, I must say that really came about because there was a pent up demand already, and I learn every day from. We have about 40 core and founding members, and I really learned so much from them. It's like being mentored by a lot of young professionals, some of who've just come out of like cutting edge academic programs. So I learn every day from them. It's often steered by some of the ideas that they've provided, some of their opinions. So it's like having 40 mentors that we mentored
All right. Okay.
to do masters in the US. So I lived in 3 different cities in the US: Philadelphia, Washington, Boston. And I would consider my period in the US to be like the school of hard knocks. Uh, and I remember once I was, a dreamy 22-year-old, and it took me a while to get back to somebody who had a job offer for me. And I got such a earful from her. I mean, literally, my ears were stinging afterwards because I hadn't called back when I should have called back, because I said, "Oh, what's the big deal?" And, that was one of the biggest prompts that I had, because it, just jolted me into realizing how important it was to have a career, to be a career, because, the way we are brought up in South Asia, at least in my generation, was, like a degree was just something you do as time pass before you get married, be hitched, get married. And so that really jolted me into action, and I, became very, what should I say, diligent about returning calls, especially when it concerns your career, about being on time, being confident also. So I think there were just so many lessons that, America is where I cut my teeth, and where I really developed as a professional. And it was 80s America, so it was a more aggressive, like me generation. It's different. It's different now. And the 90s, I lived in the UK, and that was a fabulous time, Tony Blair's era. And if I was to pinpoint one incident, I would say really the press trips that we were taken on. And they were so, as a telecom journalist, there's no shortage of, you know, press trips. Like I could go on one on every month, Uh, and I remember one month where we were taken to the Arctic, for a press trip to discover polar communications, and it was in Svalbard, Norway. And possibly I was the only Indian, I was the first Indian woman to step forth on that island. And it was such a discovery to go to this Arctic desert, and which was still, till recently, still doing coal mining. Uh, Really uncover, for the polar regions, and what I was talking about late 90s, how polar communications work, and how important they are really, for satellites over the poles. And the next month, I was taken to the equator uh, on a Airbus flight with France Telecom, and that was another revelation because that was for the launch of a satellite. So I would say if there was two outstanding moments when I can say I was so gratified to be, where I was at the time, and uh, really be exposed to places which I would never been able to go on my own or had any reason to go. They were such special places. If I had to talk about two places that had a special energy and vibration, that was Svalbard in Norway, and you know uh, French Guiana in South America. So it happened within a space of a month. And of course, Geneva had its special moments. I was working in a UN agency for telecom matters, and I can't say if there was any special space, but I did spend a lot of time, just at home, and I had a lovely home on on a roof. It was like a top floor of a villa, and everything that I had seemed to just fit so well there. And so I spent a lot of time being playing hostess and cooking, some of our traditional dishes. And so I just remember that being a time of domesticity, which I enjoyed. And then finally, I think the other place I've lived in, of course, now in the last 2 years is Barcelona. And I can't just enumerate the number of special memories I have. I spent part of the year in Barcelona, and it's just such an extraordinary place for pedestrians and cyclists. I became a much more confident swimmer and cyclist in my 60s, thanks to Barcelona and all the services they provide for citizens. The special atmosphere that's created, when you talk about there's no scope for placemakers in Barcelona because the city does everything. The city does everything so well that, in fact, a group of us were trying to do something there, and we really had to look outside Barcelona, just on the edges. So we're looking at the edges to see what we can do to improve things because things are perfect almost in Barcelona.
All right.
So
I was just enjoying you recalling those memories. The way you were telling them, it was so cute. I would say. Okay, I enjoyed that because it shows that how you grow with time and how you found the peace in different areas or your focus was in different areas. Over the years.
yes, that's true. Yes, because it's really reflects my evolution from being being very professionally focused to sort of then discovering culture and phenomena like travel, and became a great traveler in my 30s. And then the 40s were really more about settling in, domesticity. You're right. You're right. You're so right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll ask the question that I ask everyone, and it will be like short answers and everything. Okay. So tell me what drives you, what keeps you focused on public spaces and people.
Um, so, what keeps my focus on public spaces? Well, I personally like to walk everywhere. I don't own a car. And even in Pune, I like to walk to the market and buy, Shivaji market, and buy my fruits and vegetables, my favorite fruits and vegetables, do all my tailoring and everything. So I like to do it all on foot. And it's very dismaying that actually things have got worse, on in terms of pedestrian rights. People think once they get behind a four-wheeler that you know that they are kings of the road, and really pedestrians have to really take their heart in the hand and walk. Even in the daytime, and especially it's risky in the nights. People don't regard pedestrian crossings with any, they don't respect pedestrian crossings. And really, this is what keeps me motivated, because it comes from personal experience. So if I can't walk from my home, you know, uh, 2 or 3 kilometers, and do my marketing, and I still have to struggle and watch, you know, they don't get knocked down. This can't be right. And Although Pune has a great reputation, a great civil society, which is trying to push for rights, but actually it's the areas outside the government offices which have become worse. So I do intend to do something, because, of course, it's your own area, and it's important to take things into your hand and do things. So, one of my long-term plans is really do something about that, rather than just waging a single, one-woman war, and get into fights with two-wheelers parking on the pavement. And I was warned, don't do that. You could get killed or something. you could get you could get kidnapped, or something of that nature. But anyway, I think there's a more strategic way of handling this problem. And let alone biking, I know it's like out of the question to start, cycle from here. Some parts of Pune, like, it depends on where you live, are better. But this is what keeps me motivated, my own 2 to 3 kilometer walk from home to the market.
Okay, great. Okay, share your proudest moment of your work journey, like you were very proud of yourself or the work you do. Anything, any memory.
Yeah. Um, I have to say, I've received very few awards in my life, and apart from university gold medal for news reporting and writing. Um, if I was to say, yeah, once I was at a conference, and I started chatting with a group of people, and I didn't realize how well read I was as a journalist in the telecom space. And so I handed my card at the end of the conversation to this couple of gentlemen, and they said, "Oh, we're so happy to speak to the diva of telecommunications, right? Journalism." And that made me feel, oh my God, that's too much of an honor. And so I now made it a point to, create divas. Let me, and I'm so privileged in this space, in my 60s now, to see how, we have potential divas. Like in your 30s, you're at your creative best, and so we have a lot of members who are potential divas, in placemaking, and I'm really privileged to work with them and to foster them. So.
Awesome. Okay, I just love the way you were recalling it, and again, you were the. I hope that you remember this pride moment and this feeling of joy in your heart. Okay, share your hardest moment, like the time that you were struggling or something, or maybe what you learned out of it, and how did the lesson come to you as
Yes. As I said, I cut my teeth in America when I was in the 80s, which was more of a me generation. It was the me generation, the me time. And when I look back, yes, that had its benefits for my paymasters. I mean, they let me loose. They let me go and get the story, write the headline stories. I wrote a lot of the cover stories. But when I think back, uh, I say personally, I think that was not good period for me. Um, as a careerist and as a professional, yes, it was. But it's really, after your 40s, your 50s, you start evolving as a person, as a more sharing person, and thinking about the community, and thinking other than yourself, like, thinking about empowering others. And so maybe that's a natural progression from thinking about just yourself to thinking about the community. But so um, I think if I was to mentor my nieces and others, I try to inculcate that spirit of compassion and outwardness, much earlier in life. I think that makes you a better person. So that would be my, I think compassion and doing things for others, and generosity of actions are very important things for me now.
very sweet. Okay. That showcases in your personality as well. Like that hard time turned you into more softer person, I guess. So in terms of dealing with professionals as well. Because the way you dealt with me, it was very heartwarming, and I was very encouraged to learn more and connect with you more. Okay,
Thank
so
you. You're a great mentor to me as well. So
that's enough.
yeah.
That's enough. Thank you so much. Acha,
Yeah.
any favorite placemaking mantra or quote that you like, that's your favorite, like you like to follow that?
Yes, I of course, there's so many mantras, and I'll particularly like the one that I would say, um, um, if I can just take a moment to find it. Yes, Fred Kent, um, and we all think so much of him, and he said something which really, um, you know made me think, which is placemaking is about turning a place from somewhere you can't wait to leave, that you can't wait to go through. Let me say it again. Placemaking is about turning a place from somewhere you can't wait to go through to somewhere you never want to leave. And so I think leaders also should be like that. They should be people who you never want to leave, like leaders you never want to leave. And So it was a really profound statement. I think I take that into consideration. How do we make a place from somewhere you can't wait to go through, somewhere you never want to leave?
Yes. Awesome. Okay. Okay. Do you have? Would you like to share any opinion about Pakistan or placemaking in Pakistan?
Sure. Some of the things we are often, in India, being in India, we have this great curiosity of Pakistan, which is why I think the Urban Jam works so well. Um, we're often the kind of news we get is often of a lack of a civil society in Pakistan, how minorities are oppressed. And but it was very heartening through this conversation that we had that actually Lahore is pretty, the way that things are restored in Lahore, both the Hindu heritage and the Muslim heritage is kept alive. And that was very kind of a revelation and very heartening to know. And as far as the question of civil society is concerned, it was so great to have that conversation, Sunila Ahmad, and to know about Parveen Rahman, and who really laid down a life in the cause of this the marginalized communities and the fight for their rights. And so I think those are two encouraging signs. When you have a conversation across borders, you discover various things. And for me, those were two important revelations, which I hope there's more of an understanding across our boundaries, and there's a rapprochement, and very soon we will collaborate across borders, because there's so much to learn from each other.
Yes, for sure. And yes, about the news, I guess we shouldn't be relying on the news. We should rely on the reality because media is all about the TRP, I guess. That's the word they use. That's the term they use. Like it's about the hype and everything that world wants to watch maybe. But yeah, we are shifting the narratives and the stories that we tell. And now the youngsters are doing their best in creating the new narratives, which are more reality based. Alhamdulillah. Okay. So any message for the global leaders out there?
Global leaders out there. Yes, I would just say, become the leaders that nobody wants to leave. And I love that. I love that expression. Places that you'd never want to leave, and leaders that you'd never want to leave. I'm really interested in the whole theme of transformational leadership, and I'm exploring that. Maybe someday we can chat about that. So, I think thinking about others is just so, thinking wider than your own interest is so important. It yields benefits to you eventually. So that's my message for leaders.
That's great. Thank you so much, Vineeta ma'am. It was a great meeting with you. It was lovely experience, another experience that we have, the talk we have. So thank you so much for joining me today and for answering my questions and for sharing your stories. It was lovely, Vineeta. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. Yeah, it's wonderful chatting with you as usual, and it really warms the heart. Thank you so much.
That's
Thanks for having me.
Okay. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Mhm.